Inti enyumre no me stress ye nyina ye momodin na afi ye ntwe akonwa mpri ye fidie ho na ne nyame a hya amaye no ye nyina mu nhyira ne adom no ye nsa atimi aka edi kan no me de mpa ye bedi anim na afi ma dane ama First Ghana Education Department ye panyin odaya no director ye nuaba Unit Anderson na afi no dwumadi a wo ye nim na enyumre ni kina no pa ne na enyumre nyina no wada na didi amaye na afi nipa sonko a yatu yensa afre no so wada na di na mo gide se ono no ye obi a adesua mu de wakwadare wo mu obi a wosua hu pi wo na enyumre no nyame befa no so na afi ayi nhira amaye ne abusua nyina nyame ma mesro miensi etrase na afi ye mompae Yehowa yeda wase o wadom no ohumobro ade adom yen yeda wase wanim a wate a kire yeda wase wonsa ama so wen so afi mu afi no covid mu wakan ye ho yemu bi ye ko school ne ade ayamhye na ekọ yemu bi ne eti computer anim na ne esua de ne enim so de bedu ba bi ade aduri nanso Yehowa so wakan ye ho am yemu bi a graduate a ye kan say ye nkan udin yeda wase adesua soronko a weekend si wahyehyɛ de amaye wona ebedi anim nyina ye de won hya won sa soronko kwa so se ma won kronkron ka won ho ne du bress wo kasa wo de won kronkron ka won na afi ne beboan na afi atwe aben wo no de amaye yeda wase eyi wa ye kanfo din se wo hyira ye ne ebusua weekend si o Kristo nti amen.
Amen. Amen. Elder Yadasi Vibre for that wonderful prayer. On behalf of the First Ghana Education Department leaders, myself and my assistants, Mrs. Abigail Ase and Mata Pepra, we want to welcome everyone to this year's Education Day weekend celebration. Usually we would do this in person, but COVID-19, we're doing this virtually. So when we were sitting down to think of what we wanted this year's Education Day theme to be about, we really thought about how we want to engage our young people. During these COVID times, we've seen a lot of distractions. There are a lot of fears, a lot of things going on and changes happening in the world. But we want to make sure that our children know that the house of God is always a place that they can depend on. And in doing so, we thought that a really good speaker that can help us translate this message to our young people would be Dr. Peter Okrah, who's visiting us from our sister church in Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona. And Doctor, you are welcome. He's someone who is on fire for Christ. He's very passionate about youth and young people. And he has a very special message to share with our young people starting this evening, as well as tomorrow, Sabbath Divine, and then we will wrap it up with our afternoon program. I want to kick it off to Dr. Peter to start us with our message for this evening entitled Educating Our Sons and Daughters.
Okay, thank you and for welcoming me here. We are all together in one place and we are before God. I know that's been, if I was looking at my calendar and I realized that it was about 3.5 years ago that I was there at First Ghana. And it's good to be back again. I'm going to start with a presentation here and we'll do something quick just to make sure everything is working. And so let me know that it's working. Okay, I'm going to do a share. And okay. And let me know if you can see my screen.
Okay, Doctor, you're all set.
And I'm putting a full screen mode. Let's see. Is it working?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we for today and tomorrow, our theme that I'm staying on is taking our children with us. And you'll hear more about it tomorrow during the divine service, why I chose that. And so today, this evening, the part we're going to cover is educating our sons and our daughters. And that's me and Susanna. I'm going to start with a video. And the what we're actually going to cover this evening is the message that you get from this video. So let me know if the audio is coming through okay, if the video and the audio are coming through. So I'm going to start playing it. Can you hear it?
Tacoma Bridge, Washington, opened only a few months ago, was built at a cost of over $6 million. But misfortune overtakes the great structure. These are some of the most amazing pictures ever recorded by a newsreel. The actual collapse of the world's third largest suspension bridge. Only a 35-mile-an-hour wind is blowing, but this apparently sets up a rhythmic swinging of the bridge, which increases with each swing. Finally, the swinging road and the suspension cables give way and plunge into the water below. Fortunately, the only casualties were a car stalled on the bridge and a dog.
Okay. Bridge Casey in Edwargo. This is Tacoma Narrows Bridge. This is in Washington State. This is bridge was opened in July 1, 1940, and it collapsed on November 7 with a wind speed of only 35 miles per hour. Ohuna bridge did steel near concrete and so this was over you think say a toy be not a break up. It cost $6.4 million at that time. So today dollars would be about 125 million. If I picture at the very beginning, you see it's a very beautiful suspension bridge. So appearance can be deceiving. It was an elegant bridge, but it was poorly engineered. They did not learn from history how to build bridges or suspension bridge. And in fact, when they tried to fix it later, they realized they couldn't fix it. In fact, if you saw a guy who was working on it at the last minute, he was actually a professor of engineering that they then consulted to see if there was a way that they could fix the bridge. That bridge lasted only 4 months. And it took 10 years to construct another bridge, which, as you can see, the cost was over $15 million. So you see, it took a long time and it cost them a lot of money. So what can we learn from this? The question is that, are we doing the same thing when it comes to our kids? What are we doing to help them to be resilient for the future? Because sometimes we think that everything is fine, everything is fine. But the question is, does he have more strong foundation in that? What's going to happen in the future? Are they going to collapse just like this bridge, the beautiful, expensive bridge? And I say I look around, the most reliable way that we can get our kids successful is through education. I mean, in this country, that's the only way. And those of you who heard me speak before, I was speaking with these 3 verses. 3 John 1 verses, beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things. You see, I highlighted all things, so it includes everything. Psalm 127 verses said, behold, children are a gift of the Lord, that God has given us a gift of our kids. And Proverbs 13:22 says, a good man, a good woman leaves an inheritance for his children's children, our grandchildren. So whatever we're doing today, is it something that's going to last? Something that would help not just our kids, but our kids' kids, our grandkids. Why is education important? Those of you, if you study American history, you probably ran into this name, Horace Mann. It's education. And so basically he did the research, looked at everything that make this country successful, the United States. The thing if you want to look at it, what's the biggest thing that is very important? The conclusion that he drew, education then, beyond all device of human origin, is a great equalizer of conditions of man, the balanced view of social missionary. Some of us work in places where the only reason why we're there is because of our level of education. The success that we have, the influence that we have is because of the education. Now let's come to our own Adventism, what Sister White wrote. It said, there is no work more important than the education of our youth. Every influence should be brought to bear to educate the youth and elevate their moral. The future of society will be determined by the youth of today. And today I kind of said, sometimes we're thinking about, well, they are going to determine future. In fact, some of them should be running things today when we talk about the youth. And we're going to see examples of some of them. Now continue. This is what she said in the Fundamental Christian Education. Children are in great need of proper education and that they may be of use in this world. So basically what she's saying, if you don't have education, you're going to be useless. It said, if Christian parents live in obedience to the requirement of divine teacher, they will not devote so much time to artificial life. Little precious time will be lost in needless outward ornamentation while the minds of their children are almost entirely neglected. A project in Ghana. It looks like every Ghanaian adult is doing some project in Ghana. There's nothing wrong with that, but the point is that the first priority should be our kids. And so if we are not spending our time, our resources to help our kids, then that means that, we're devoting so much of our time and resources to artificial life, to the house we got, the clothes that we have, the car that we drive, all those things. And she said, those are not important. If we neglect the minds of our children. Now, if we look at this year, in fact, somebody was talking about, when he was praying, talking about what has happened the last year. Actually, it's almost like it's a year and a half that we have to deal with COVID. And so what you have is, you look at the 2019, 2020, COVID started in March. So that's when schools shut down. Is that going to go to online learning? It didn't work because most of the thinking was that, okay, well, the year is almost over. We're in March, school will end in May and June. So, okay, that'll be a loss. So the summer will come, COVID will go away, and then we start the academic year in August, September, and then everything will fine. And then when August came around, the schools were not ready. In fact, if I recall, New York, you had to postpone the reopening of school for like 2 or 3 times.
I believe it was 3 times.
Okay. So and then we look at the academic year, so they're going to do virtual learning, hybrid, all these things. It didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically what we have is about 1.5 years of below average learning in our schools. And in fact, if you look at how much they lost in learning, typically the students miss up in the summer. But in this case, you can look about the summer losses for a year and a half. And in fact, it was worse for middle class and poor students because what happens is that the rich people, they hire tutors. They actually create their own sort of mini school systems to help their own kids. Now, for some places, the next academic year, 2021, already started. Here in Arizona, schools already started. And they're still having to deal with in-person, virtual, mixed, whatever. The question is what's in store for learning. So here's something that we need to make sure is that parents, we need to make sure that our children are meeting grade requirements. Omoko school is all school is a Ghana for the time I echo school no. And once they are school near true within and one and the teachers take over. You can't do that here. And sometimes the mistake that we make in this country is, oh, my kid got a great report. It looks very good. Oh, as long as I got A's and B's, that is great. Well, the American John said the good grades are not a good measure of learning. Because I've seen that. I've seen kids who come to my program and they got A in math. They are 8th grade, 9th grade students, and they can't do basic arithmetic. And I'm wondering what happened. Well, that's what happened. So having a good grade does not measure learning. The parents who say who said the course was that man, I did almost see and power almost and sometimes we have to supplement their work. You can go online and there are a whole bunch of websites, for example, Khan Academy, that you can practice at plenty of other websites. We may have to hire tutors to teach our kids. There are practice books that we can buy. You go to every store, you can find all these practice. We can order it online. And we need to monitor their progress to make sure that they are progressing in the school and their level where they're supposed to be, not just, oh, they came home with good grades. But as I showed me for the last year and a half, they're learning didn't work as much. Yeah, immigrants, so we also have a special challenges. Because sometimes young parents, we're not even familiar with the school system. It's not somebody at the school. The education system here is different. There's language issues. You know, yes, what the profit there, but sometimes, depending on where you are, sometimes when the Americans start speaking, you can't even understand them. And that's also when you speak, they can't understand you. That can be a problem, even though you're speaking English. There are cultural differences. And there's discrimination and racism. We live in America. There's also a culture shock. Some of our students are intimidated when they start school here. Or they're embarrassed because they say something, they say it wrong, or they say right, whatever, and people laugh at them. And so what happens is that when we have our kids who come here and they feeling this, and sometimes they don't have anybody to talk to. As a result, they gravitate towards the wrong crowd. Yes, it's true that Ghanaians are watching American TV and they think that, you know, they, like our kids out there, we send them the iPads and all the American, you know, tools, everything else. But the real America is not like TV. And so when they come here, it's like a big shock. When you came here, it was a big shock, and probably some of you still dealing with that. So one of the things that we need to make sure that we meet the challenges to prepare our kids before they come here. That's prepare them in Ghana. Make sure we give them a realistic expectation. Because one of the things that I've seen happen is that whether out of guilt or whatever, so particularly Ghana and Ubi Shoma, you know, we're working so hard so the baby chance on my into be American ones, so this day graduate, what you put near my ones, what for container, now they offer all the things you can buy now. They living like they're in the United States. And then they come here and things are different. And so they need to have a realistic expectation. The work that you're doing, how hard that you're working to provide the roof over the head, to provide the money and all those things. Sometimes they don't know that. And also we need to seriously consider when and why you're bringing the child to the US. I mean, what I have seen is that the kids who come here at a very young age, they get used to the system very quickly. But when they come here, say in the high school, that's because a lot of times they are self-conscious. And you can have some problems. So these are things that we need to look at. We need to have realistic expectations because some of us, if you're a man who for several years. Sometimes be and crata same grade to go and go home. So all you have is WhatsApp and Facebook and all these things to talk. But when they get here now, it's a different. You have to build a new relationship. That they need to understand you, also need to understand them. So one of the things that I suggest that we can do is that we can build bridges. For example, we have in our churches, young adults who are here, but they are part of the congregation, they're part of the church. They can help out. Because sometimes the kids don't want to talk to you, the adults. They won't talk to, but they will talk to another person who's closer in age to them. We need to make use of them. We need to talk to other parents who have brought their kids here and even before our kids get here, to talk to them to see what experience that they went through, what lessons that you can learn from them. And also, some of us have been here for a very long time. We understand how the system works, particularly the school system, and that we can share those information. So again, What I'm saying that we want to be a community that we're sharing and helping with each other. So now let's look at the American school system. I kind of broken up into the K through 12. Basically have the pre-kindergarten and the kindergarten. The basic point that you're trying to do there is to make sure the kids can sit still and they can play nice with other kids. That's what you must say doing kindergarten. But then you get to grade 1, 2, and 3, the other part of the grade, that is where the kids need to learn to read and math. By the way, that's also when they start tracking the kids as to where they're gonna go. Are they gonna do advanced work later on or not? They start giving the kids some tests that you, the parent, you need to sign up for to make sure that your kids are on the right track. And they get to grade 4 and 5, like over here, the way they broke into school is like the primary school is up to grade 5. And so by grade 4, grade 5, then deciding which classes that the students will take in middle school. And depends on, again, the track and the test that they take. And then they get to middle school, they're doing the same thing. So we have to make sure that each point that the kids are prepared for the next stage. And I'm because prepared, and you say be at the grades in Guam, but the question is a child learner. And then you get to high school, and that's a preparation for college. And beyond high school, you need another level of education. You need to go to some form of college, either academic college or go to vocational college, like community colleges to do. Again, how well you do in high school is what determines where you're going to go to college, and you can get money to pay for it. And you get more career choice and more opportunities. Then from there, you can go to graduate school or professional school. Now, what does it take for us to be successful in education? There are two things. Dedicated parents. Yeah, I will follow. Now, when I say parents, that's all one man. But all the adults that are in our community, we are account. Penny for you know, be account. Say, yeah, mano adisuya ehun hiya. Na deɛ ɛwɔ se yɛyɛ no yɛyɛ, because the bi wɔ hɔ nom a ɔwɔ sɛ ho hia me, and so they are not spending any time ɛyɛ dɛ boa yɛ ma no na kyerɛ sɛ wode w'ano na ɛka no kwa. You have to be real dedicated, and the students have to be dedicated, knowing that it's important, their future is important to them. Again, there are barriers in the system, like kind of racism, you will find that everywhere, but that should never be an excuse. You can overcome them. Economic reasons, you know, financially challenging. But when you're committed to that, you'll be successful, overcome that. And so when we say taking our sons and daughters with, and we just say, yeah, you know, with deep commitment, parents and the students, that the mano omudache ehu hiaye. The mano so the muza mudache so ehu ehiamu. What I tell people is that, so mama no papa, if they didn't help you, even if they didn't help you, 20 years from now, you'll be living your life. You can keep blaming them, not gonna do you any good. And this is time for you to take seriously your own future. I talked earlier about grades is not equal learning. That's always true. In fact, when you look at the students, it doesn't give you a complete picture of the students' academic performance. One of the things that parents we can do to find out, say, yeah, Manu, are they progressing academically beside their grades? Most districts have these district tests on the students on certain grade level. People are like grade 3, 5, and 9, and then the high school, whatever. So you need to check those district tests, and sometimes there's also state exam. Probably here in Arizona we have different ones that they use. I'm sure it's the same thing in New York. The state exam. So make sure that when your kids are taking those tests, and what the report is about, make sure you understand the report, because what it does is some of the tests are like national tests, like for example, Stanford 9. I don't know whether you all use Stanford 9 in the school system, that they have these national tests. One of the things that are in the report on the bottom is not just the raw score, but what they call percentile. And which shows that we are 50th percentile. Not just that students that will your level now with them 50. So we are 90th percentile. Not just that you are part of the top 10%. And you know, it gives you an idea. This is about the A, B, and Kwan, Abba, the grade, kama. Now, we compare a report to now what numbers at 20th percentile, and now 30th percentile. Not just that there's a big gap. When we through high school, one of the common tests that they should take is the PSAT. And the test normally is given in October at high school. Now you have to sign up for it. I know say New York City school, they actually have a contract with the college board out. They give the test to the students in the spring. But typically some of the school districts, they only give their PSAT to the grade 10 or grade 11 students, the grade 10 and 11 or grade 11 students only. And to make sure that our kids take the test in grade 9. Find a school. Sometimes we go to private schools, you can take the test there. It costs only about $20 in October. And the more I'm on my high schools, they say, make sure that this October, they sign up to take the PSAT. You will get an idea where your kids are compared to other high school students that are almost their same grade level. In particular, more like sophomore and junior year, that is an excellent test. I prepare for the SAT you need to take for college. One of the biggest problems is time management for our kids. So we hear every school district, average school year only 180 days. In fact, some of them have other in-service days and all that stuff. Oh, let's take the 180 days don't go to school. Typically, they go to school for about 6 to 7 hours. So we every day, if the kid sleeps 8 hours a night, and then you take one day out every weekend, like take the Sabbath out, which means that the busy time the kids have in a year is only about 40% of their time. So what do they do with the other 60%? Most of the time they're sitting at home, they're watching TV, they're playing on their phones, on websites, all those things. Whereas they are not doing academic work. Things that will help them in their future. You see, the problem is that if you don't build the bridge strong, you don't build a strong foundation, it's going to collapse, just like the bridge in Washington State collapsed. So here a question for the parents. Do you visit your kids' school? We haven't even been there since then. Do you know your kids' teacher? Your free parent-teacher meeting at Yanko. Homework and the buffy crowd, we don't check whether they've done the work or not. Are we checking their progress to make sure that they are actually progressing academically? Are we planning for their future? For example, are we saving some money when they go to college? Do we know their friends? Oh, what's the matter? Maybe no, see about you, baby, crow. Are you helping your kid to plan for their future? Because it's a moment who say, "Oh my gosh, who here?" So here are some basic things that would help us. We need to encourage our kids to read. Reading is one of the critical essentials, and typically kids need to read by grade 3. We need to talk to our children to know their course of their course of school, to manage their time. If you open school about no, then around by midnight, afternoon, homework as well, not to top up also. And then they can't even get a good rest. We need to check their homework to make sure that don't just ask, have you done your homework? Check to make sure that they've done their homework. We need to check their progress throughout the school year. Their TV, video games, Facebook, all those things. We need to monitor what they're doing there. The library. I mean, a lot of time now, these days, in fact, a lot of the library, the books are actually available online that you can even download there. With tax dollars, they build a library to make sure that your kids are using. Your parents who should also use the library. And the internet is another crazy thing that we need to make sure the kids are using properly. We need to make sure they are responsible for the work that they're doing. I mean, I work with some parents that sometimes they turn in work, the student turn in work, and I realized the student didn't do it. The parent did the work for the child. And I tell them, you do this again, you're out of my program. Kids need to learn, okay? If they need help, we need to provide the help for them. And sometimes we need to ask for help. A big problem, too late. And for the students, there are two things that you need, an attitude and aptitude. Attitude, making up your mind that something is important. Because when you think something is important, you're going to invest in it. And in the aptitude, with the knowledge that you need to acquire. But say, even if somebody going to tutor you, going to do everything for you, help you out, but if you don't have the right attitude, you're not going to get it, because work also, you won't do it. So those two go hand in hand. So one of the things that you need to learn all you can, because this is the best time to learn. You need to build that strong foundation so that when the wind starts blowing, your bridge is not going to fall apart. We need to take responsibility. As I said, 20 years from now, you cannot blame your parents. And you need to make your good friends. You need to stay away from idiots. Some of your friends are idiots. I'm going to put it, and this is not me saying, that's what the Bible says. You say that, stay away from a fool, because you will not find knowledge on their lips. Make sure we got good friends. Parents, let's help our kids find good friends. And again, the air canning out is not easy. It's not cheap. There's no victory at bargain basement prices. We need to invest in our kids, and the kids need to invest in themselves. One of the things that is becoming a big problem is our use of the internet. In particular, a lot of young people don't know that, they think that, they're posting all kinds of things online. What you need to keep in mind that the internet is your permanent record, okay? When you post something, if you think you deleted it and it's gone, no, it is not gone. It is still there. Somebody who's looking for it can find it, okay? Now, if you send something to somebody, whether it's an email, a text, a picture, whatever it is, realize that you're sending it to the whole world. Okay, it will come back. And we've seen a lot of examples that have done that. So whether is when you post something, think seriously about it before you post stuff. And we've seen things that are unbelievable that kids are posting. Sometimes you think it's a joke. It isn't, because it will come back to haunt you. And the negative consequence, sometimes maybe just a simple embarrassment, or it can be something very serious. There's a Vista High School, a Womi school district. In fact, a high school district, one of the high schools, but just about 3 or 4 miles from where I'm sitting right now. In 2016, the class of 2016, high school class of 2016, for the yearbook, they were going to take this big picture that showed all them wearing these T-shirts, and some of them, they had letters on it to say like a nice statement that they're taking this picture and it's going to be in the yearbook. What happened was that 6 of the girls picked specific letters. And for Black people, you know this word. Now, this is a school that is like almost 90%, more than 90% white. There are 6 white girls, and they pick letters that the first letter is N, and the last letter is R. And they stood together and took this picture in their gym and immediately posted it in social media. Well, it didn't take long for it to get around the world. Within about an hour, all the TV stations in the Phoenix area were there at the high school before even the principal figured out what had happened. This was, I think, was in April. Guess what happened? These high school seniors. Some of them lost the admission to college, the scholarship that they have received. They withdrew those scholarships. In 2017, Harvard rescinded 10 students, they actually won by Harvard. They rescinded the admission because of what they have posted on the Facebook that Harvard had created for incoming freshmen certain things that they supposed to have. I said no. And there was no recourse because you're now already a student there. Most jobs actually are checking your social media posting. And if you work in places where I work, they're checking that every day. And so a very important is that we need to make sure that kids, you see the seriousness of what you post online or even what you read online, the websites that you go to, all those things are very, very important. They will come back to haunt you. Before I get to here, there's a question I want to ask. When we look at our schools, or when you go to high school graduations, even college graduations, typically, who are the people who are graduating at the top of the class, who are getting the awards most of the time? You can, I don't know whether you allow them to unmute their line to shout it out or whatever. Do you see mostly boys or mostly girls?
So the audience, this is an open question. T. Feel
Yes.
free to either.
When you go to high school graduation, the people who are getting awards, or most of the time, are they boys or girls?
Well, doctor, my observation has been it's mostly the young women that are getting
Young women. Okay.
awards.
Now let me ask you something question. Are there more girls, more young women in the school system than the young men?
In
Anybody
my
want to take it?
graduating class, it was over predominantly girls.
Okay. Do you remember when you were in kindergarten?
Mhm.
Well, look at the
Kindergarten.
church. Look at the church and see if when they got the little kids, are there far more girls than boys?
I gotta say, Debbie.
Yes, that age, it's parity. It's
Parity. Okay. So the question then is, so we're going to talk about some of those things, why that's the case. So I just put this chart there. Okay, you talk about two things. So if you look at the New York City, the public schools in New York, right? I'm going to talk about two things. I'm going to go down to the bottom first. There are more boys in the school system. In fact, if you look at the US population, up to about age 20, there are more boys than girls. So what happens when they get past 18 or beyond? So we're going to talk about that in a minute. When you look at the New York City public school system, it's about 15% white. Blacks from about 25, 26%, Hispanics about 41%, Asians about 16%. Now look at the other column about their specialized high school, like Bronx School of Science and all those elite high schools. Look at the numbers. So the question is that why is our kids not going to these schools? Now, when we say Black, sometimes we tend to say, oh, we're Ghanaians, right? No. Everything that affects Black people in this country affects us. When somebody sees your face, you're a Black person. Those statistics do apply to us. Look at that. You got Asians who are most of them are just as immigrants as we are. And they're over 60% of the specialized high schools in it. So why can't we change the numbers in our favor? I mean, yes, the mayor talked about they want to change the way that they admit the students, all this stuff, but I can tell you that whatever system that they come, unless we are willing to invest in our kids, these numbers are not going to change as much as we hope it would. And even if they change the numbers, some artificial change the numbers, when our kids get to these schools, are they going to be successful? Unless we have invested in them. Now, I always use this chart here. And we talk about why things are changing. We talk about something. There are more Black women in college than men, 2 to 1. And then you get to prison. In 1980, there were 3 Black men in college, 1 in prison. By the time you get to 2000, it was like you can flip a coin that a young man, a young Black man, will either go to college or end up in prison. The numbers haven't changed that much. What happens? If you look at the population, the Black male in the United States is about 13% Black. So that means male is about 6.5% of the population. But these are numbers from 2010. Black men form 40% of the US prison population. Black women is about 1.3%. The state of New York, 50% of the people in the prison are black men. So you see what I'm talking about. Are we preparing our kids to go to college? Are you preparing them to go to prison? Now, I showed this picture the last time I was in New York. I don't know if you remember this. Like I said, sometimes we tend to think that, oh, this is the American blacks, Catafona. Now, I don't know if you ever remember this story that I showed you. This is a young man, 21-year-old. And the picture on the left, he's in a court on trial. And the picture on the right is the day that he was sentenced. His charge, he was sentenced to 6 life sentences. 5 of them for prostituting a 15-year-old girl. And the other charge was murdering a guy who was trying to take the girl away from him. It's a Ghanaian kid. He was born in Ghana, brought to the US as a teenager. At age 21, he's in prison for life. And yesterday, the parents brought him and left him. This happened in Texas. The dad was a professor at a medical school down in Texas. The mom, also a Ghanaian nurse practitioner. In fact, what the mom said that sometimes they wish they had not come to the US because they were not prepared. So the question is that, are we preparing our kids to go to college or to go to prison? It's a Ghanaian kid, came here as a teenager. So what happens is that there's a critical transition that takes place for our boys. Typically, girls enter kindergarten more prepared than boys, right? But the biggest problem is before, from the primary school into the middle school, they want to be boys, they want to be men, masculine. And sometimes the parents will encourage that. And the biggest transition is when they're going from primary school to middle school, they're not quite well prepared. And as I told you, that they need to learn to read. And the girls tend to read faster than the boys. And so that means that we need to invest more in helping our boys to read. Because up to grade 3, the kids are supposed to learn to read. That's what, from grade 3, they have to read to learn. And they say, well, through grade 4, and that's what books want to mean can kind of idea now. If the idea man's on kind of want to mean kind of crowd, you cannot understand it. And the gaps start widening in middle school. And it gets wider as they go further. And by the time I went through high school, go to the ceremony, some of the boys even drop out somewhere in middle school, because some of the state, by the time a kid gets to 16, they can drop out of school with no consequences. It didn't start when they got to high school. It started at an early age. And in fact, what we have to do is to make sure that we are preparing our boys as early as possible, so that they don't become the statistics, or either they end up in prison because they didn't make it to college. So here's some of the underperformers. Our boys are playing more video games than the girls. They spend more time on the computers. What are they doing? They don't read. Our boys don't read. Anything that has to do with reading, no. They're playing computer games. They don't want to do their homework. And what happens is that when they start falling behind, after school, so they're there just to kill time. They get to school late. Okay? So anything that has to do with school that will help them, they're doing the opposite. Now, sometimes parents make the mistake that, oh, I'm at the computer, so as if it's almost your computer. No. Spending time on the computer doesn't make you a computer scientist. If you want to be a computer scientist, you need to study mathematics. You need to read. So these are things I say a boy man. They need to read. You need to spend more time learning math, solving puzzles, critical thinking skills. Video games. Some of the kids can sit in front of the video game the whole day and becomes quite addictive. You can't even break off from it. What they are sorry, they are not pressing the buttons, playing games. The hours that they're doing that, they're not doing homework. Even though you think that they are focused. See, the computer game actually, it hijacks your brain into the sort of skill that you need, which is be able to focus and attention on other things. You can't do that. They cannot do their work. They spend too much time, not time to do their schoolwork. They're up in their room at night playing games. Time also that on that. Okay. And everything that they do, they expect to get immediate reward because when you play video games, you get all these rewards. You get these new tokens and you get all these powers, all this. Okay. Now the other thing is that they spend all their time focusing on the game. They don't even talk to you, the parents. They end up having health issues. And then some of them start playing these violent video games. Or people say, oh, it's not going to affect you. Yes, it does affect them when they play violent video games. Reading is critical. Students who read more perform better in school. They have to read all kinds of stuff, fiction, other materials, not comic books, by the way, because they need to read. And boys are less likely to read, which means that boys not improve. We need to help them to start reading at an early age. Now, the best performing students are good students. Now, I put the word good. Good students are students who's disciplined, the one who follow the rules, act appropriately, respectful towards teachers and other adults and other students. They recognize authority. They can sit for a long time and follow instructions. Which means that the kids need to be able to self-regulate themselves. They need to be able to sit still. They need to follow directions. They can control their emotions. So you see, in a classroom, a lot of boys become quite disruptive because they're agitated. So they say boys will be boys. But the problem is that it's hurting them in the classroom. Before you know it, they start giving the kids psychiatric medication to calm them down. Maybe we need to take the sugar off the kitchen counter, all the candy that they've been eating. We should stop eating those so they can calm down. They're not hyper all the time. So you look at it at a young age, they sit there, they not want to raise their hand, they don't want to speak, they don't want to listen or pay attention because they're engaged in their other things. When that happens, a teacher will know what the classroom where there are about 30 kids. So they're going to focus on the kids who seem that they came to learn. Yes, there are gender differences, but the problem is that there's things that we can do to help them to be disciplined at an early age, to sit down, to listen. Now, I'll talk about parents in a minute. There are stereotypes. One, academic performance. Well, about black boy, the teacher thinks that the white kid is or the Asian kid is academically superior. They don't know anything about your child, but they already formed that opinion. That feeds into what happens in the school. Sometimes we think that, oh, boys are good in this and girls are, no. Because they need whatever, what is math, they need math, whether it's a boy or girl. Reading, they need it. And then we see discipline and punishment. For example, one of the research that's been done is that black boys actually are punished harsher than white boys with the same infraction. It is like 6 times. worse. And in a lot of places, here's something that you'll keep in mind, parents keep in mind. When your boy is a little boy, 5, 6 years, it's a cute little boy. They get to high school, middle school, they are as tall as a lot of places. Most of the teachers in the schools are white women. Like where, I mean, even some of the urban schools, when you look at the number of teachers who are white compared to the students that are in the school. And our boys are just as big, as tall as these white women. These white women are scared of them. And then our boys start developing a deeper voice. Teacher can't be on no can't be a teacher no brim. And why not afraid assistant principal? And then they call you the parents. Before you know it, the boy is not interested in school anymore, not interested in going to the classroom. So again, these are things that we need to make sure that we are helping our kids to understand, our boys to understand it. And then they get to middle school, there's sports. Well, it's a sports day. If you're big and tall and you can jump, then you get all the cheerleaders cheering for you. It's only the strength. Oh, then they get the idea that somehow they're going to be the next LeBron James or whatever. Thinking that they're going to enjoy this Okrah, they're not studying. And before you know it, they're falling further and further behind. Parents, what do we expect of our kids? We give our boys more freedom than we give to the girls. Now, I'm sure some of you will testify to that, particularly some of you women. So let me ask a Ghanaian parent question. If your son came to you and said, oh, I'm going out to hang out with my friends, what would you say? And if your daughter, who's about the same age, I'm going out and hanging with my friends, what would be the answer that you give? Somebody want to chime in here?
The floor is open. From my personal experience, that will be completely different reactions. Completely.
Okay, we do want to quantify a little bit more. It's a completely different reaction. Like, I want specific. Like, okay, you want to.
Well, for me, actually, okay, go ahead. Who?
I can go.
Okay.
I know. Please say your name and where you're from.
Susan Okrah.
Oh, hello.
His daughter.
Hi, Susan.
I know growing up, it was like, where are you going? It depended on what friend, and you had to be home by a specific time. Right. And it was never like Fridays were like a no-go, and you weren't going to sleep over at that friend's house either.
Right.
Now, fortunately, I have only girls, so that's not a fair comparison. Okay, go ahead. Somebody else wanted to say something.
We have 82 folks on the line. The floor is open if you'd like to share your experience. It's an open question. The question is, if you have a son that were to come up to you and say, hey, mom or dad, me pie, me kwaba, versus your daughter who were to, say the same thing, what would your reaction be?
Can I say?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Mostly we protect our daughters than our boys, because we think the girls will go out and have a relationship with boys. And we think when the girls have issues, they come back to us. So we try to defend that. But with the boys, we think when they have babies with other women, it goes back to where the woman lives. It doesn't come back to us. So mostly we allow our boys to do whatever they want to do, but the girls, we most likely controlling them. That's my view as a parent.
Thank you, Uncle Maxwell.
Hi, this is Angel Okrah. It depends. I've heard it both ways, because I've had friends who find they have to protect their boys more because they're around girls that are a lot faster than them, and the boys don't realize they're being kind of played or something's going to happen to them if they're not careful. So I've seen parents take both ways. Same thing with the girls. Sometimes the girls they both have to be watched. It just depends on the scenario and where they're going to school, because either of them can be taken advantage of.
But in general, particularly in the Ghanaian context, what are your experiences? One more line. So the parents, maybe these are things maybe I won't join home. I never really, but you know that you do things differently. I think you want to share your own experience.
Oh yes. So I'm the oldest of four. 3 girls and 1 boy. The youngest is a boy. And when I was his age, it was school, after school tutoring, and church. Those were the only 3 places I could go with my parents' permission. Without their permission, it wasn't happening. However, my brother, I've started to observe, especially now that he's 20, he can go and come as he pleases. He will, of course, let my parents know that maybe he's going to work or he's going to hang out with his friends who are also in the church. But that restriction, it is not as stringent as it was with me and my sisters. So it's basically love the sons, raise the daughters.
Okay. So that's what we see. And in fact, I work with parents and I see that sometimes they have a daughter come to the program and the son comes over. The excuses that they will make for their son, they didn't make those excuses for their daughters. And I think that what happens is that and all these things that we consider to be freedom essentially end up hurting them later on. And that is very critical that we pay attention to this. And because see, by the time they turn 18, the system is not gonna be lenient to our boys.
Right.
And so you have to think about why is it that 50% of the people who are in prison in say the New York State are Black male. What happened? Now, something that may be interesting in some way. When you look at single Black young women, they outnumber the young men who are single. And you're wondering why is that you have singles ministry at church and it's just full of just women. Who are the men? Where are the men? They're not there. Most of them are either not eligible because they don't have anything to contribute to marriage, or they're in prison, or they're dead. And here's some of the things that happen. You know, the Black women are more educated than the Black men. Again, this started back in primary school and that continued on. And let's be realistic. The woman who has gone through school, become a professional, whatever, don't expect that she's going to just pick any man because he's a man. And let's be realistic about that. Even if we go to the same church. And even they're not even in the church. The men are not even in the church. The Black women, because they have more education, are making more money. So again, this is the stuff that started. You know when I talk about the bridge? That have you built the foundation? That it can be resilient to the forces that will happen later. We didn't help our boys to be steady, to do well in school, to get through the primary school, middle school, high school, and to go to college and become professional. So here we see that what we saw, continuing. So things that we need to do is to make sure as parents we're giving guidance to our kids, our boys and girls, and pay attention to maybe the things that will hinder our boys in particular. To have effective role models, male role models. They see that yes, man is not the only thing that you do is to be strong and fight and whatever, but yes, you can do very well in school, academically, society. There's sometimes the fathers who abdicate their responsibilities. I have families who are in my program that sometimes, if I wanted, I thought it was a single mom. Yeah, 3 kids that are in the program. And I never saw the dad in any of the meetings. And so a lot of times what we do is that, okay, it's like, looks like the child real is just the woman's responsibility. They have to go to work, cook, clean, take the kids to school, take them to the after school program, check to make sure they're done their homework and all this stuff. And what are the men doing? We're sitting on our couch watching TV. I hope some of you will speak to that because you've seen that. We need to build communities of support, either in the church, in the Ghanaian community, wherever we are. The support to help each other, hope to encourage others. So what shall we do? Of course, I'm not going to present stuff or the problems and not show some of the things that we can do. We don't need to cut back our attention to our girls, but we need to increase our efforts to raise our boys to become men. We need to teach the boys and girls the same thing. Now, what I mean by this is that if they have to do their homework, they sure do their homework. Make sure they're all doing their homework. There are no shortcuts. We need to stop making excuses for our boys. And we need to demand accountability. I mean, it doesn't make any sense that you have in the same family, the girls are doing what they're supposed to do, but the boys aren't. And they're allowed to get away with it. And one of the things that is significant problem that I see about what is happening in our communities, among the Ghanaian community, is sports. We're spending so much time, so much money in our kids' sports, but then we say we don't have money to hire tutors to help our kids. We need to pay attention to what goes on in school and what goes on at home when it comes to it. And, you know, the Bible says that what? Stay away from a fool because you'll not find wisdom in their lips. So we got to make sure that our kids, particularly our boys, have good friends, boys that will motivate them. So here's the thing. Like the Tacoma Narrows Bridge, our kids will fail if we don't give them the proper foundation. And the cost to correct it, even if you can't, at least they were able to tear up that bridge and whatever would remain and rebuild a new bridge. Sometimes you can't. Your kid gets to 18, the kid did not learn anything in school that will help them to go forward further. It's too late. You can't go back to kindergarten. You can't go back to 3rd grade. And the cost that is far more than if we had done it right. I took this picture from the Facebook page of First Ghana. Now, I don't know when this picture was taken. I like what it says, Jesus loved children. I don't know what, so if you look at this picture, this is what I was asking earlier. If you look at that, about the same number of boys and as girls in here. Now, let's project 20 years from now. Would we have the same number of young men and young women in the church? Would they be at the same level? Would they be at the same level of success? I don't want us to fail our boys and girls. So that means that we need to make sure that we're bringing all of them up the same way to make all of them successful 10, 15, 20 years from now. And we'll have them in our churches. We have them in our communities. We have them in our society. I want to stop here and see if anybody has any questions or contributions. I don't know, you're the timekeeper, so you keep up with that. And I don't know if there's people sending chats or something. You may want to monitor that also. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. This was just part 1. We were laying the foundation of this entire weekend's message, which is teaching our children. So the floor is open. If there's any questions or contributions, please feel free. If there were parts of the presentation where you'd like clarification, there's also an opportunity to do so. Doctor is here to provide his expertise and his personal experience in tea. Please feel free. And you can unmute yourselves before you make your contribution or ask your question. Mpachai.
Mama Linda. Sebia, oye boy, now go school, go college. Maybe a game be with be a usua de chile ba. Ubetumi de college say o kwa. Maybe a usua de na obra na wakwakwatra ho abo. Eno no ebebo me pese no kakra.
Okay. Okay. The I can say it doesn't mean say you give up everything. I mean you need to again be able to the alcohol school. Now the problem is the drew bravia. The time I spending in a baby, the best thing I did in near the board game. So what's the idea? You know what, brain out, so I just want to play game. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, you need to rewind sometimes. But the American, the problem say, the time when you TV, board games and competing online, those sort of things. And then the biggest problem, just a game, Nankasa, there's something wrong with it. But time where you spend it at the board game, and then a problem.
Yeah. Doc, a question came in through the chat. Do you have any advice for parents with special needs children?
Okay, most special needs children, the biggest thing is the state where you live. Because every state beyond and the school district, they have different services. Because sometimes some places, one more special schools are, depend on the level of severity.
Right.
And this special needs child, first of all, make sure that when before the Bible started school, we need school district and social workers, ACASA, and sometimes they will do some testing or whatever to see the appropriate measure. So whether it's between our school or the regular case, and I say we're setting our accommodation. Be all the more the kid, slow in reading, they need more time. Sometimes they are just homework and you can or extra time now they are your homework.
Right.
It be also they have to give you a special school and I say special classroom. Because severity, is different, depends on the child. And the first place that social workers at Warhol in particular, start with the social workers at school. We need to talk to them as early as possible. And I feel so whatever plan that they come up with, make sure set plan what you see. And for example, where is it going to get my child? Because one person it never got time to compete anymore all day when you are here. Or better school until 18. Then one year, and they bianca and we bianca to actually integrate into the school system and give it me. Into whatever planner one bed drop, make sure the plan what you say, say this is what the plan is, what's going to accomplish at every year beyond and as every semester beyond, what's the progress? Where will my child be a year from now, 2 years from now, and so on and so forth. Yes, but make sure say you understand what the benefit, because sometimes it be a while I didn't hear services with school or say here services outside the school, maybe to make sure say you really talk to the social welfare agency and what maybe I want.
So I hope that answers your question. If there are any other additional questions or not contributions, please, the floor is open.
Sometimes you are saying, "Oh, yes, we put up and pencil betty as empty yanka." But we're here to help all of us, and we are here together to help each other.
Okay. I see a hand raised. Yes, you can ask your questions.
Yeah, Eunice, this is Seth.
Oh, okay, Seth, please feel free.
Yeah, he talked about critical thinking in kids. So I want to know how we can help our kids, especially toddlers, as they're growing up, how we can help them with critical thinking.
Okay, like for example, at the very, very little kids, take a game like Lego. It's an excellent, it's a building blocks. So the kid want to build something. What are all the pieces you need to put together to build something? That builds your critical thinking skills. How to use puzzles. Basically, critical thinking is how do you solve a problem? That's the bottom line. And as they start young, some of these things that they're doing with their hands and actually have to create something. Those are things that you want to do at early age, and that builds on. And then they start to school and they start doing some basic math, because that's what math is. It's essentially building your critical thinking, because you have to solve a problem. You said, and so you can start at an early age and build on those things, the things that essentially learning how to solve problems. That's really the basic thing. And there are different things that you can do at different age for kids.
Okay, Doc, we had a question come through the chat.
Somebody say AZMARE. I don't know if it's the same person who asked.
I think, yes, that's him. That was Seth.
All right, I just saw a hand up. Okay, go ahead.
So the first question that came through the chat says, I heard you mention that you have a program that you do for children. And if I am in New York and I want my son to join, can I and how?
Okay, actually, there are some people even in your church who are part of the program, so they probably should chime in and probably tell you. Anyway, I take students from when they finish grade 7 and before they get to grade 8, and it's actually quite limited. And I take them all through high school till they finish their SATs and the ACTs and the senior year. But the way they come in is there's a limited number of slots, and so the first slots go to the families who already have kids in the program, and then whatever slots that are remain, they come by recommendation from some of the parents who either are in the program or they've been part of the program. They get to recommend people to for us to take them for the additional slots that are there. And then sometimes there are people who contact us and then we put them on the list. But that's the priority how it goes. So
okay.
But like I said, there are people in First Ghana that they can chime in. They can. I don't want to. I see some of them on here, but I don't want to mention their name. I want them to offer themselves because they know how it works. So.
Or if it's about the admissions process, maybe we can table that.
Yes,
and
they
whoever
can send
asks the question, we can connect them with you later on.
Yes.
Okay. So the next question, how can we help our young boys self-regulate their emotions? So boys ages 2 to 7.
Okay, I think they probably need to talk to a psychologist, so but they'll be able to help you a lot more. But one of the things that, I mean, every child, even boys and girls, try to see where their limits are. And the question is, are there things that we tolerate more that we don't want to tolerate, or we think, oh, it's okay? That's some of the biggest problem. And of course, one of the big problem is that our kids eat too much sugar. that also make them hyper. And also some of the games that they play. And so that all that comes in. But I think that probably I would defer to the psychologists and the child experts to probably help on that, and so that that's something that we can actually put together a program for to actually specifically address what are the best way to do that. But
so would you recommend the earlier the better imposing
absolutely
okay.
The earlier the better, because Okrah bi no agye no osu now the amano. Okay, think about it. What's the learned behavior? Oh, as long as it miss some quality at the mame. It's all.
That's a good point. So our next question, do you believe the system has been designed to hinder the financial freedom of our Black men compared to Black women?
No. Here's what I mean. What I said, you can say the same thing about Black people and white people. Yeah, the system is rigged. I mean, let's be honest about it. But the problem is that we don't have anything to compete. Then you cannot say that the system is rigged against you. Because if you have the education, right, and then somebody refuses to hire you, then you just keep marching on, but then you can see that. But the problem is that if you don't have the education and you don't have the job, you're going to say the system is rigged against you. No, it's not rigged against you. The point is that make sure that you have the proper preparation, the proper skills and all those things. And that's is a far bigger problem than the blatant racism. I mean, the women can say the same thing, that there's certain type of jobs that the men wouldn't even give it to them, consider them. But they're still being successful. So the point is that yes, you're going to hit the ceiling every once in a while. You're going to bump your head every once in a while, but you have to be there. You have to have the tool that allow you to sit at the table. But when you don't have that, then you can't complain.
Okay. Do we have any other questions for our audience? The floor is open. Again, please feel free. We have around, is Pastor on the line? I want to make sure on time because we're nearing 9 o'clock. And see, maybe we can make room for 1 or 2 more questions before we wrap up.
Yes, I'm on the line. Yeah, I've always been on the line.
Yo, I heard someone speak.
Let's keep going. If they have questions, we can keep going for some.
Yo, Pastor, okay.
15 minutes.
Yeah, question. When will the recording be available?
I think the recordings are always made available after the program. So there's this evening, tomorrow, Sabbath Divine, and then Sabbath afternoon program. And then our monitor, I believe, Alex Opoku, head of our communications department, is on the line, and he can make the recordings available at a later time.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll post them to YouTube at the end of the program. Once we finish all 3 sessions, we look at YouTube.
Again, the question is, how do people get access?
I saw a new YouTube page. So
okay. So First Ghana YouTube page. Okay.
And I can share that link with you, Doc.
Okay.
I heard someone else. Was there another question?
I guess my case be a small contribution.
Sure, Alex. The floor is open.
Sure, Alex.
Kids are always fresh.
Oh, they repeat everything.
The irony of my program here. So Tetenona and man you push yourself on school, on and my dear say, oh, could near warranty, school baby would be annual drew. And sort of a interesting say, sort of they say situation na flip boys not sort of allow take school seriously, and the girls don't know bomb home. I guess we call a contribution or observation. And I'm sort of the question then becomes: you find an equilibrium. You value the education of both boys and girls, such that we are between you here what sex you do. So we are swinging from one extreme to the other extreme without finding the right equilibrium.
And the question I was supposed to say, and the answer no is in the question, which means if we push you over the same way, say education who here. It is whether boys or girls that is important. Education is important. And when we have also the boy, whether it's a boy or a girl, to go further. I think that the big problem is that we assume that the boys will always be okay. And what we are finding is that that's not true. And it means that, and I'm kind of saying, we don't need to lower our efforts for the girls, but what we need is that we need to up our efforts for the boys. To make sure that because we've seen as they kind of the whole result and the result is good. Into as it anybody boys no who ye they between a boy so according without shortchanging the girls. So basically, we're pushing all of them the same way. If you push it, whether it's a boy or girl, you're pushing in the same way. Of course, sometimes it will be here more help than the other. So maybe boys will hear more help with reading, and be a girl no here that much. But then that means that's what the boy needs. Is that we need to help them in their reading. It's a big woman. So you just have to look at what their needs are. So if we start with the basic premise, the person now succeed. And you can't be a fast bit me up because if I want my cry, girls cry now. They have different needs, and you have to meet the needs of each one of them. Or all boys are, you will find the same thing. The point, and then they say, the person succeed. In the crime bed, they fast so they are individuals, they almost and the way we will find out is that we need to monitor to make sure that they are progressing. So and then we don't find out too late, because that's one of the biggest problems. And when we through high school, I feel and by that time, they don't have it. They don't have those foundations, into anything that comes in, it pushes them and they're out.
No, Doc, that's so funny. Maybe to me, busa question, then make a comment.
Pastor, go ahead.
All right, yeah, that's a
that's a program or Pagaf, no.
Oh, yo, now was yo, Nyamisha. Baby, I really minya insight power into education ekosoa. Na ye course school minim so be kaya 80s as early 70s started at class 1. Remember Ghana no remember na ye work class no eventually end do no akoyenim na ema no bi say I offer na discourage you ma so man na wo mu school first so na ema no so te Ghana no minim say na dey asesa minim say na dey ema no start o nyina kokowie by your time no na ema no kopa bo se bedru ba bi no na ema no bebre aware nyinsen na jese omo ojai now Oba bro, still na no mema no e Ghana no wo kopa. Oba bro chiri ha no a sene na wo kan. Is it that the system, there is something in the system working against black men? Either say a combination of a failure and a communities no so a failure. Because if ya abrofo mema no wo kopa. Na ye black mema no wa ha no. Na wo e follow. Wo de oba bema beba krum ha. Bia no Ghana no na okoskupa. But Oben so Babedru ya a memanoa mitena Italy chair be 5 years or so. Me decan once and I make Kogana Samba. And then all I was there for about getting to 10 years. Near me who ye need. Italian men no be breton namu market ni tomatoes in Pabuan and Tadi Memano. Oko marketa It's a culture shock. I said, now will come me face you. Me buy me who say Ghana a man over market, right? A man a ton toast in Naming Pabuan in Yama. Uber Italy rather a man on a war market and a man over bank, a war office, and in Yama. And the bakery ni pizza, ni money, my Juma Dini Ghana a man a tubro. But Uber Italy a man a tubro. And Uber who say a man who school or Italy. But man because of beton pizza, beton tomato. Yes, soft one, Bruni soft one, and then you doctorate, not or no Berman in your doctorate, to minimum a pure intelligent chain, Italian word or intelligent chain. When you couldn't enter in doctorate, no Wakobondo. Abroaching Hanona, and say, Baby could tear your man manua. Now, Dr. Boy.
Okay, let me take it several things. In fact, now I don't want to be stereotypical, but Italian men sometimes they tend to be mama's boys.
Okay.
In fact, what crowds not ni mami feel no good. There we are. So I'm sure you saw that.
Yeah, exactly. You are right.
Okay. Now here's what happened. Here's what happened. So so we kind of earlier on say can you know not the whole idea is that man will course go do baby or whatever worry anyway and the man that was it will go school. Oh yeah, me China. But then that began to change. And say okay, Ghana says yeah that has changed. We come to realize that a man they can go ahead, they can do all the things that they need to get. Their status in life is not say or oriented. That's the only thing that they go. And I think that's a good thing. Over here, the problem, some of the problem is that initially, one of the things that we wanted to help, the same thing was here in this country. I'm going to address several factors in it. The same thing was here about the Emma school. No, of course, it changed earlier before Ghana. Ghana. They were the same thing here, whereby it was the men who were going to school, because the whole point is that if we're going to invest money in them, because then we invest on them in the men, because Obama Waris is here and school degree no go ground fine judgment build, But then we realize that the women, and so the women realize that they can do better. They can be they just as smart, they can go just as far, and the point is that why should we waste the intelligence of half of the population? I think that that's a good thing. Now, what happened with some people argue say while they were pushing women's education, we neglected the men's education. But the sad factor is that the other factor that came in. So one, as I said, girls are more prepared. Their development, so they actually are able to read earlier and all those things. And they no ebwa wom. Na so we hear we say abrofo no. Actually, abrofo no nyina. In fact, I have this article from Newsweek from back in the 80s. It said the problem of boys. And I looked at the cover of that picture. It was a picture of 4 boys, and all of them were white boys. Well, the Black community had that problem for a long time. And so when it started changing, that now you have more white women getting more college degrees than white men, which is now that's the case. There are more white women getting college degrees than white men. And then graduate degrees. In fact, if you go to law school right now, there are more women in law school than men. Medical school is about 50-50. In fact, the only area of study that there are more men than women is engineering, and then mathematics and physics and those sort of things. Business. So academically that changed, because most of the idea is that women, the only thing they're good for was to get married and have baby. That changed. And then the men, initially the men were okay because there were factory jobs that they were doing that they were making pretty good money. Those factory jobs disappeared. Okay, and not there anymore. So these are some of the factors that now you're talking about white people. Actually, it's mostly the more middle class and upper middle class whites where you see their sons are doing just as well. And here is the key. They are investing more in their voice to bring them up to par. Because who's they can hire tutors. And in fact, they can also pay for them to go to college. Because if you're a girl, when you're scholarship, a boy, and when trying to into but the parents can afford to pay. So they can afford to pay for their sons to go to college. Even though they're not doing as well, they didn't do as well as the girls. And so that is what is happening. So money is actually essentially cushioning them to some extent. Okay, now, before we also compound the problem. Is that when we don't start, well, first we are starting at the lower base, right? And sometimes our own personal economic situation also preclude us from helping that. Sometimes your own education level also so we cannot help them. And then you compound that with sports. I mean, everybody playing basketball, everybody think that their kid is going to be the next basketball star or whatever. So we're putting the wrong emphasis early on our kids, the wrong emphasis. And so by the time we through high school, no more catching. As I said, they start at the primary school, they're not that much different between the boys and the girls. Academically, even though the boys read a little slower than the girls. But once they get to middle, that's where the transition happens. And they also become self-conscious.
They are being pushed into rap, into sports.
And all this, and they see all these images that are on TV and they are influencing them. And the parents, and so we think that the boys are going to be okay. Yeah, mama, and they say we need to protect them. But here's something that we have to keep in mind. So you didn't say, my boys, and almost caught they will fine. They're going to get into trouble. They could get in trouble with somebody else's, either son or somebody's daughter or something like that. And by the time they get to, so the problem, if we want to solve the problem, we need to start early. And then I'm going to show a picture and say, what are we doing for our little boys and girls to make sure that we're keeping them on par as they go through the system, as they grow up from the kindergarten to the primary school to the middle school, making sure that they are on par. Now, so for what you also did, I'll give you a challenge. I'll talk about it too. They say I am monkey to a show picture. Say yeah programs be as education program be and be every week be we bring them together and helping them with their schoolwork, teaching them how. What do you think would happen if we're able to keep them throughout the primary school, throughout the middle school, throughout the high school? At the end of high school, would there be a big difference between them?
Yeah, they will excel in school and in the church too.
In the churches.
And we'll keep them in the church too.
So again, it's an investment that we need to make in both our boys and girls. And when you make investment, you have to invest a little bit more in one area than others. You know.
Doc, that was a more beautiful point.
Doc, I just like to interject here with just one question, I guess, to wrap us up. You made a very excellent point about mirroring or being the first examples that our children see, especially for, I've noticed with young boys, if they see older men excelling and they're successful and they enjoy education or what have you, then they are more likely to mirror that. So Papa Fuono, like any advice or insight you can give to the dads on the line who have young sons or adolescent sons, how they can best model good behaviors and good attitudes so that their sons will also grow up to emulate those and want to be successful and enjoy school and things of that nature.
Okay, so Papa Fuono, as I said, I include not just those who have their own kids or whatever, but all adults. We are all part of God. This is a okay, so
made me example now me the first person I would tell me reading me Bible, and then my father helped me to read a graphic. Ni oye ni so orthographic no ba na okan wi osikofi kan. That time I started class 1. Osikofi kan. And the making kan where's no so but was just read it. And the me read ya. And then say Kofodia police station, no police officer. Kofodia police station ni Kofodia library na ebe. Inti da a year holiday vacation bibia no ko djuma pe na o make sure say ma me park me lunch ni bibia no ko jam wo library. Inti ko jam wo library no de me eja library phone page for no so o mo hwe me so no call no police station. Inti we our lunch time no abehwe say me okay na me nyina didi then you go back to the office. Inti 5 p.m. our point djuma obefia pe no be family library abebe. Inti within a year no na almost all the books in the library Kofodia library na makan akusi. And the eboa me mami ko school the textbook be mamia within students struggle to read the pages a book of about 500 pages make my reading in 2-3 weeks na kind in because right from childhood na me father the graphic kind library can ashame of course those days na computer games inside na niho and the parents yen na e was say frase o papa no kura no o mpe akenkan wo ho enti abofra no so onsua hwe o ba wa o ti game ho bo there are some adult parents doctor excuse me to say obo game chen ba bema there are some fathers almost spend time bo game chen obo game chen no papa no mu no so na we ebe ye no enti dog we dem ejama me de media kakra example
although that example of mine that's precisely it's a young adults we need to show that education is important and we bring our kids to meet other men and other men in the church and as in the community so they all kind of a graphic in fact meaning papa bia on no one go school that and so they be all no or they be all no taught the graphic in the Ghanaian Times now or the banana man who is all kind of graphic in the Ghanaian Times so now we change it in the Warsaw so and say you as a parent now say what point papa what point if you buy the first a New York Knicks basketball game we're tuning in over here now. Well, by the way, is he gonna do? You're so consumed by that grass or question that we need the course of cry. And we need to show them, other people. These are other men. And like I said, you look at First Ghana, there are a lot of men there, and all of us will also need to make ourselves available to help our young men. Sometimes we need to take them out, show them, and talk to them, see what is going on in their life, since what is affecting them, what they're thinking, all those things. And if we befriend them, early on and guiding them, then we become the effective male role models when we're here to help them, that they also can become like that. The problem is that sometimes we're too busy with ourselves to reach out to grab the net. Like I said, we see that, the boys, they can't do that by themselves. I mean, they're going to do what they think is easy or fun or whatever. And sometimes we need to show them that to become a man, it means responsibility. And these are the things that you do to become responsible. But I think that if we start them early on and academically they're progressing very well, school and they will do well. A lot of times, and yes, they are not smart enough, but certain experiences or certain lack of training as a result, they feel certain deficiency, but they cannot come out and voice it, and they channel their energy to other areas. And we can say, for example, school, where to go in the classroom, you're not very happy about it, but then on the basketball court, on the football, you're 8th grade, you're the big kid. Oh, the girls are cheering for you. Tia doesn't go. And
So in the context of the church, is this where men's ministries department can play a role?
Men's ministry is to grow. I mean, every ministry is, look at it. What's our basic thing about our kids? We are supposed to bring them to Jesus, which means that we need to train them We say train a child the way they should go. In fact, that I like the translation and have people to look at that verse. Look in the New Living Translation. I like how it works. Look at it in the New Living Translation, that particular verse. It says, put them on the right path. So we should show them what is good. And in that case, they will not depart from that. So that's what I would say, is that we have work to do, all of us. Now, Papa for in particular, main Jambo,
too much on them. We live too much on them.
Yes. Agreed. And see, I think we can wrap up here. There'll be another opportunity for full discussion, questions and answers, God willing, tomorrow during our Sabbath afternoon program. But Doctor, thank you so much for the great message, for establishing the foundation of our theme, which is taking our children with us. And see, Pastor, if there's any sort of last minute announcements or anything like that, the floor is open and then we can pray and wrap up.
Yo, better Dr. Sipa, nyami aduma china ye ono a graduate free kindergarten. Edi Ekosi University ni na china ye moda. Want to celebrate you, want to be who say we are proud of you guys and more achievement. So we kindergarten successfully. Yeah, we call class 1. Why you dear papa. Once why achievement. And then the person omunyina ba na ye celebrate you na fe your bomb pay mom na ye push you on their way forward. Omunya wiye ombeko manim sa ko say wombe wiye omo highest level ombetumi akodru. Nti akina awofo yan prepare omunyina na ye celebrate na omo aninye. Se bi kura ko school de da kura na ebetumi say the ayet zoom sunti ebetuma link omo bekan ho. Happy message doc what my and prepare ya when any more friend ya no nyina besuma bom. We're going to have a combined worship tomorrow. Any youth needing kwadani nyina worship put together near T doc message on media man no or the amaye china na area no so ya twaso we are sundown worship new we are board by emergency meeting. I think 1 or 2 items na yan check na we for the day when I mean kind no shray yes with him. Amen.